What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about a pretty saddening story that is making its way onto the internet. And it's making quite a few people upset. Now, here's what we want to do, or here's what I want to do. I don't want to make this a console war thing, because I think that as soon as this news kind of came out, the first thing that some people did is make it a console wars thing. I don't think it applies. I don't think you need to be a Sony diehard to go after Xbox or whatever. It should just be that you don't have to agree, but I mean, I would say I very much dislike this move. I think a lot of people dislike this move, and I think you can just look at it for what it is versus making it a whole, well, they're Xbox, so they're the devil, or they're Xbox, so they're the greatest company of all time, so we have to defend them. Throwing that completely outside right now, which is what I try to do for all of these things. What we have here is Xbox jumping into AI. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what lengths they already have done it, if they already have. Obviously, we've seen a lot of companies over the last couple of years really get invested in AI, and you've seen it in Hollywood, you've seen it with the strikes, right? A lot of trying to get, let's say, protections against AI, and this kind of scares me, because one thing that we have seen with AI in gaming specifically, and not maybe necessarily Xbox, but just in gaming in general, is a lot of artist stuff, right? So AI will come up with concepts. You can feed it a prompt, and it'll make a nice looking, a background or setting for you, and you kind of go from there. And I do think there's probably a happy medium somewhere, and that could be controversial. I do think you can get to a point where AI literally does help a human being, and I think that's probably where it makes the most sense and where it's the most productive to get things done faster, to get ideas that maybe you can kind of see in your head, and maybe it can kind of come up with it, for you, and so you can kind of just use it and use it as a jumping off point to add to. I think there is a way of making it work, but the sad thing is, and the thing that scares me with this that we're going to talk about today, is it never really stops there, or we haven't really even gotten there yet. What tends to happen is when companies go into AI, you see a little while later that these people are being fired or laid off. And in particular, it doesn't look good in the gaming industry right now, considering while it's been a great year for games, it's been a terrible year for developers keeping their jobs, right? But we've talked about many studios having layoffs, and, actually Xbox in particular, they haven't really faced so much this year, but if you recall, and actually maybe it was even earlier this year, maybe it was still in 2023 or maybe it was 2022, where when Microsoft laid off 10,000 employees, and it was across all of Microsoft, so Xbox studios were hit, but we don't really know how much, right? So they have had their turn, and the point is, that's kind of where we're at. I feel like we're at the point where executives look at AI and say, how much can we get out of it? And it might not even be all that good in terms of AI, but we can maybe lay some people off, make some extra money if we can do that, right? And that's what scares me, at least in the short term. So what we have here, we've talked about artists and in terms of visuals and stuff. Well, this is writing scripts and quests and things like that. So it's two different bullet points. An AI design co-pilot that assists and empowers game designers to explore more creative ideas, turning prompts into detailed scripts, dialogue trees, quests, and more. And then an AI character runtime engine that can be integrated into the game client, enabling entirely new narratives with dynamically generated stories, quests, and dialogue for players to experience. So both parts, not necessarily the exact same, but think of an open world game. Think of when you walk up to an NPC. This is basically saying you can feed that NPC a prompt, or it'll do it, and it'll create kind of dialogue for that NPC. Or the first bullet point was quests, right? So side quests, main quests. You walk up, you get your quest. That is AI, generated or AI driven, and you go from there. Again, two problems here. Number one, we're not at the point where it's all that good. So yes, that might change in the future. To be honest, though, I'm a little old school, even though I'm not all that old. I prefer kind of everything written in a game to be by humans. I'm not a big fan of any of it being written by robots or AI, right? That's just me. But I would like a world where, and I understand it's difficult. I understand that it takes time. I understand that creating, say, and this is a thing, when a game has NPC characters, just in the background talking, and I think Hogwarts Legacy actually experiences, there's a person almost dedicated to doing that. That's an entire job, right? So if you have AI write that person's dialogue, or all the NPC, the characters that don't really matter, they maybe have 3, 4, 5 lines each, that's an entire person's job at the company. You give that to AI, sure, they say that it works hand in hand. Have we seen that yet? No, most of the time, especially with these executives, it's, well, let's see how much we can get from it. It's probably not going to be high quality, and then we can just fire the person that would be working on it instead. And that's really where we're at, with this situation. So personally, in an open world game, I'm not saying like Starfield 2 is going to have this, right? Or like Elder Scrolls 6, but you think of games that have open world, and we're talking specifically Xbox here. They're the ones working with it. I know it's an industry issue, but the next open world game from Xbox, or 5 years down the line, an open world game, how many of the quests are written by humans, how many are generated by AI, and then again, I guess it's a little bit deeper. You got to dive in to, is that going to cause any job losses? And I feel like, yeah, I maybe am jumping the gun and saying that, people can get fired over this. Maybe that's going too far. I really don't think it is. But one thing I can say to kind of defend myself, once more, look at what's happened. Look at this year. Look at 2023. It has been terrible. Even when studios are doing like kind of fine, like they're not that all. They didn't have the biggest failure, say, like of their entire careers. Even studios that didn't do that, they're still getting hit. They're still downsizing. There's still redundancies that are eliminated and stuff. Like studios are still getting hit. So imagine when you continue to. I mean, there's been stories. There was like a small indie team. I think it had like 20, 30, 40 people working, and people found a story about how they partnered with some AI thing to do art, and then a couple months later they fired their art team. And it's like, yeah, that's one example, but it's what scares me, at least personally. It's what scares me about AI is that is one example. It's a smaller team. I can't even think of like the name, you know what I mean? Like it's not all that prevalent. But you don't know. You don't know because in 2, 3, I mean, this moves fast, right? So 2, 3, 4 years down the line, what does this do? And does this, make people lose their jobs? Does it make games feel uninspiring because they're not written by actual people anymore? And again, old school Alex here. Like I'm not a fan of that. I would like people to do like the entirety of the game. I know we've had the art discussion. Now we're having like the written discussion. I know not every game is written perfectly. You could argue some of these terrible games that have come out, could AI have written it better? Yes, I'm sure. But you tell me what AI could come up with like an Alan Wake 2, right? That narrative or something as crazy as that, they can't, right? So it is a difficult, it has intricacies for sure, but I'm going to stick with I prefer humans. I prefer humans over AI. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.